Hey, and welcome to a new video. This is a one-off video I wanted to do simply to answer one question. How far can you progress an account in 24 hours limited entirely to free-to-play? The rules are simple. I have to earn everything on this fresh new account from scratch, so that is to say no starting GP from another account, and I have exactly 24 hours to progress as much as possible. My goals are pretty simple. I'd love to get at least 40 in all my combat skills, giving access to the highest tier of free-to-play gear available. I'd also like to complete all free-to-play quests and also progress my non-combat skills in useful ways. So without delaying any further, let's go ahead and jump right in. Straight off of Tutorial Island, I sell a few items to the general store for a few starter GP. I could get more for this stuff at the Grand Exchange, but it's not worth the trip just yet. I use that starter GP to buy some wines and drain our village, which are amazing because they heal 11 HP, which is more HP than I even have currently, and only cost 1 coin. They also do lower attack level, but that's not really a downside just yet because I'm not really going to be training melee for a while. The reason I grabbed these wines is so that I could complete the Stronghold of Security, which is a dungeon that when fully explored gives you 10,000 starter GP. I didn't bother going all the way down to the ground floor as it doesn't give you any additional cash and only gives you a pair of boots that, while good for free to play, aren't necessary for this account. After collecting my 10k, I utilized a death warp to regain my run energy. Thankfully, dying with items not worth much or stacks of cash is safe as death can collect my items for me without a fee. Now 10k is a great starter cash stack, but it's not going to be enough to accomplish everything that we want to do with this account. So the first thing that we're going to do is focus on securing a decent moneymaker. There are a variety of moneymakers in free to play, but I would like to focus on something that progresses a skill at the same time as it makes money. So I settled on cooking, which is something that can make a decent amount of money and also gives pretty fast XP. The downside is the decent moneymakers for cooking require a high cooking level, with one caveat that I'll get to later, and training from level 1 can be quite expensive. So to mitigate this, I headed to the fishing shop in Port Sarim where there's a stock of sardines that can be cooked from level 1 and a range nearby to cook them. A short while and about 1.5k of my cash later, I had 17 cooking and was ready to move on. My next idea was to head to the fishing spots by Barbarian Village and loot the raw trout and salmon people sometimes drop and cook them there on the fire. On paper, this seemed like a great way to get some free good cooking experience, but in practice it seemed like most people just cooked their own fish and then dropped them. After hopping through most worlds, I only found a few fish to cook, so I gave up. With that plan failed, it was on to the Grand Exchange to continue our cooking training. Now the Grand Exchange and trading in general on a brand new free-to-play account is very strange. You are unable to sell quite a few items on the Grand Exchange or use the trading interface to give items until you have reached 20 hours of playtime, 10 quest points, and a skill total of 100. The main problem is the 20 hours of playtime, as obviously I will not bypass this limitation until the last 4 hours of this account's playtime. This means that we'll have to work around this limitation the best we can. Thankfully, raw and cooked trout and salmon are not items impacted by this limitation and can be freely traded on the Grand Exchange. So my next step was to buy these and cook them on the fires people training firemaking lit around the Grand Exchange. Thankfully, cooking trout and salmon does result in a small profit, but because my cooking is so low, I burned enough that I was still bleeding a bit of money. After a few minutes of cooking at the Grand Exchange, I realized I should probably buy the supplies for Cook's Assistant and Cook in Lumbridge. Not only does the quest give a small amount of cooking experience, the range has a lower burn rate for specific food, and trout and salmon are included in that. After about 30 minutes, I was able to cook salmon up to 35 cooking, which is where we'll begin our next method. Even though I was turning a small profit at that point, our cash stack was looking pitiful at just under 6k. In order to begin this next method, we would really need to up the cash stack a bit, and in order to do this, I did a bit of pie shell making. This is good money but doesn't give XP, so I didn't want to do it for too long. It is also very simple, just a matter of buying flour, water, and pie shells and combining it all together. After about 15 minutes of this, I was up to a cash stack of just under 30k and was ready to begin our next cooking method. This method is a bit more complex than the previous cooking methods, as you need to buy all the ingredients and put them together, as the raw food item is untradeable. And that's plain pizzas. I was able to buy 100 pizza bases, tomatoes, and cheeses for about 20k cash. Put them together, cook them on a range, and then sell them back to the Grand Exchange. Now here's the catch. I burned over half my pizzas, but I still basically broke even. I also gained a large amount of cooking experience, so my burn rate will go down quickly and I'll start making money soon enough. You might be asking why not continue to do trout and salmon until my level's a bit higher, then do pizzas for a better return. And I'll tell you that we actually will benefit greatly from burning as many pizzas as possible, but more on that later. A few more rounds of pizzas and now we're making a bit of money. Now I have enough capital to buy 200 pizzas worth of supplies. This resulted in 135 cooked pizzas, which was enough to sell supplies for 300 worth of pizzas and supplies, and so on. You know what time it is now? It's pizza time. This time we cooked 218 of the 300 pizzas and our cooking level is up to 49. I'm also cooking them at the Lumbridge range now because it's a bit closer to a bank. This means running back to the Grand Exchange is eating up quite a bit of time, so it's time to invest in our first upgrade for the account. I bought a bunch of runes, a fire staff, full armor, and a few wizard mind bombs to train magic with. I could start by using the wizard mind bomb to boost to 3 magic and cast Confused, which will always miss due to me wearing full armor, meaning I can continue casting it. This is much faster than wind striking the first few levels of magic. I do this until 11 magic where I can wizard mind bomb to begin casting fire strike. With the fire staff on, I don't always splash, but I do splash most of the time, so the guards don't die very often. After a bit though, I decided to take off the armor so I can get some HP XP while I train magic. After getting 19 magic, I'm able to wizard mind bomb up to 21 magic for low alchemy, so I throw the armor back on and do some elk splashing for even better XP rates. It doesn't take long to end up at 25 magic, which unlocks the Varrock teleport so I can get to the GE efficiently. Back to another round of pizzas and we're able to cook 516, putting me up to 52 cooking in a cash stack of 196k. This in turn gets converted to more pizzas, allowing us to cook 901 for a new cash stack of just over 330k. One final round of pizzas puts us just under 1,500 cooks, selling for a massive 556k. We also wound up with 67 cooking, which is pretty notable. If we ever decided to go members on this account, 70 cooking is required for Recipe for Disaster and Barrow's Gloves, so that puts us pretty close to that requirement already. Unfortunately, however, our pizza making took nearly 10 hours and 30 minutes of our 24 hours off the clock. This leaves under 14 hours for training and questing. So I decided to start our post-pizza progress by completing all the free-to-play quests I could, and started by buying every single item requirement for the Grand Exchange so that they could be in my bank when I needed them. I also bought some basic magic gear, a lot of runes, and some energy potions which are wonderfully now free to play and should speed things up a lot. The last thing I did was buy some big bones for prayer and got to work burying them. Unfortunately in free to play there's no faster prayer training than just burying big bones, but I did multi-skill by doing some low alchemy while burying the bones. I buried them until I got 31 prayer, which would be handy for later on. I would have loved to keep going until 43, but unfortunately I just didn't have enough cash on hand. Then it was off to the races, time to complete some quests for free to play. I started by completing Sheep Shear, then did a bunch of multi-questing. I didn't really have a guide for this, I just kinda tried to complete the quests I knew were in the area I was already headed to. In Draenor I did stop and buy a Chronicle and some charges for it, as this teleport will be very handy. I also low elked constantly while running around to gain some passive magic levels. Cue the quest completion montage. At this point I had all the free-to-play quests completed except Dragon Slayer 1. The problem was, however, Dragon Slayer 1 will require some better stats than I have right now to complete, so it was time to train some melee. Thankfully, Vampire Slayer resulted in 20 attack for free, so I was already able to wear a Mithril Scimitar. I started out at the Men in Edgeville for the first few strength levels, but at 15 strength I moved on to my primary combat training method for this account, killing my alts in Clan Wars. Thankfully, I have a peer with 1 defense and high HP, which makes it ideal for training up this account. I do only have one of these accounts though, so after it dies and is resetting, I have another account with about 40 defense to train on. Ideally I'd have 2 1 defense counts, but I just don't have them and thought this was still worth it to train this way. I trained this way to 27 strength and then 30 attack and figured we were ready to take on Dragon Slayer. In actuality, we're probably still under leveled, but I wanted to take it on as early as possible to benefit as much as possible from the combat XP rewards it offers. Thankfully, you don't even really need to fight Elvarg head on, you can flinch her by hiding behind some rocks in her cave. If you're not familiar, flinching is when you trap an NPC so they can't retaliate even though you hit them, because you run away too quickly and keep them trapped. It was definitely a struggle to get Elvarg down this way, taking over 10 minutes, but it was super worth it as the experience reward put me straight to 37 strength and 33 defense. This also means we have successfully completed all free-to-play quests at this point, and it only took us up to about 15 hours and 30 minutes, meaning we only spent 5 hours completing quests and training the little bit we needed to complete Dragon Slayer. Next I wanted to focus a bit on some non-combat skills and decided to start with crafting. Crafting is nice because it can make a bit of money by crafting jewelry, which still provides decent experience. As you can see, a sapphire and gold bar costs about 350 GP, but the amulet brings in about 500 GP for 150 GP profit. I got up to a 267k cash stack again, and 49 crafting within just a couple hours. I use this money to invest in some adamant and trimmed rune armor, which will be nice because it gives a small prayer bonus. I also got some food as I was needing to AFK combat train a bit, and had the perfect place in mind to do it. Flesh crawlers are an excellent place to train on free-to-play as they have low defense, high HP, and hit very infrequently. You can sit in the room with them for 10 minutes while they auto-attack you, and then you need to reset by leaving the room and coming back. This was a great way to train up my melee stats without having to pay as close attention as the Clan Wars method required. It took only about 3 hours to go all the way to base 40 melee stats, bringing the total playtime up to 20 hours and 14 minutes. Now you may have noticed during the melee grind we passed a very important milestone, 20 hours played on the account. This opens up full access to the Grand Exchange and trading, which allows us to sell a very important item I've been holding on to ever since basically the start of the account, our burnt pizzas. RuneScape has all sorts of people who play it, and there is a very dedicated community of players that collect all sorts of items that are tradable, but not able to be traded on the Grand Exchange. One big category of these items is burnt food, and the rarer the better. Burnt pizzas are one such item, and that's why I was hoarding these from the beginning of the account. They can sell for 2 to 3k each, and all I needed to do was wait for a buyer. Thankfully there exists a Discord for finding people to buy all sorts of collection items, so it only took a little while to find that buyer. If you're interested in checking out the Discord, I've left a link below in the description. During the downtime, I did a little iron power mining while superheating the iron into bars for a bit of smithing, magic, and mining experience. I did this to 31 mining and 33 smithing, also nabbing 48 magic along the way. Thankfully we found a buyer pretty quickly for the burnt pizzas at a healthy 2.5k each, meaning we now have all the money we could ever want for free to play. Unfortunately, however, we only have 3 hours of playtime left to actually utilize that money. I decided to invest the rest of my playtime into range as I feel like it was the most useful skill I could still potentially level. I bought all the gear I needed and headed straight for the chickens to get the first few range levels. I also did a bit of low alching while training range to keep the magic gains going. Before long though, I went back to Clan Wars and my 2 ults. This XP was great and the levels were flying by. I did this straight to 40 range using the rest of my playtime doing so, and unfortunately that means our 24 hours have fully expired. As you can see, we did wind up with a bit of cash left to our name, which will be handy going forward, but due to the fact that we couldn't sell the burnt pizzas for the first 20 hours, we were unable to fully use it. We were able to train up most of our stats to useful levels however, including base 40 combats and that very helpful 67 cooking. I would have loved to get at least a little bit of time to get some of my stats up that we didn't touch, such as woodcutting and runecrafting, but other priorities definitely got in the way. The other cool thing is that we were able to fully complete all free-to-play quests, giving the account a great foundation. A combat level of 49 and almost 1 mil total experience rounds out the account's first 24 hours in free-to-play. So that's all I've got for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope this was an entertaining analysis of the first 24 hours of a free-to-play account. I'd love to continue this account's progress into the future, and if you'd be interested in seeing that, maybe the first 24 hours in pay-to-play after this, go ahead and leave a comment down below letting me know. Now one more thing to do before we go, and that's that we can't leave without thanking the members who have joined the channel. Your support means so much to me, so thank you so much. And of course a double huge thank you to Mad Hatter and KittyLynne for joining at that top tier. Thank you again for watching and catch you in the next one. Goodbye.